Freedom, freedom, freedom over fame. Freedom over cycle stays the same.
Welcome in, everybody, to this episode of How to Ride a Roller Coaster. My guest today is Mr. Charlie Last. He's the founder and CEO of Humble.inc. How are you?
I'm doing very well, mate. It's great to see you.
It has been so long. I mean, I know we say that with everybody coming out of COVID. We used to see each other
Right.
all the time at networking events and just, doing work together in the past. But it literally has been a while since I've seen your face.
Yeah,
How
I'm
are
doing
you?
really well. Loving the show, loving the format. I think
Awesome.
the stuff that you've been putting out is fantastic, and it fits in really nicely with what we're doing. That you're talking more openly about the roller coaster ride that this is.
And it is exactly that. And we'll definitely dive into Humble.inc in a second because, as we were just talking about before the show started, entrepreneurship is hard. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter how much you have investment, any of that kind of stuff. It's just hard. So before we even kind of dive into that, tell people a little bit more about what you're doing with Humble.inc and kind of where you are.
So Humble is a combination of a software marketplace that we launched 3 years ago with a consultancy that we launched last year. And we are focusing on the mental health aspects of entrepreneurship, bringing that to the fore, really like having that conversation, as well as providing people with all the resources that they need to actually get started, like tangible things like day one, you need to do this, day two, you need to do this. And it really is like a logical next step for what Dallas Inc. was doing and the combination with the marketplace, which is the comparison company.
And I feel like mental health is a great place to kind of start when it comes to entrepreneurship because it's definitely not talked about enough.
No, it's not.
We kind of live in that hustle and grind world. It's like up at 4 a.m., burning on each end. You got to outwork the competition. And I get it. You have to be dedicated. You have to put in the work, but there also has to be that balance. And I've found with myself, if I'm burned out, if I'm trying to do everything on my own, burning the candle at both ends, I'm worthless to the product that I'm working on. And I'm also worthless to clients because they can feel it. They pick up on that energy.
Yeah. I mean, the stats are quite alarming. 2/3 of entrepreneurs suffer from anxiety and depression, half of which have had substance abuse issues, and a third of which are contemplating suicide. It's now exceeded as a career, and it is a career. It's not a side hustle. It's not I've launched an app thing. Like being an entrepreneur is a career, and it now has the highest rate of suicides of men under 40 above farming now, which is horrendous, and people don't talk about it. There's this misconception that you come up with an idea, launch an app, and you're on the cover of Forbes next week. It just doesn't work like that. It's and Novak Djokovic has a really great quote. He said, "It took me 17 years to be an overnight success."
Yeah, I think we're pretty similar in age range, but it feels like we're also kind of part of that Zuckerberg world. Where we saw Facebook before it was open to everybody, and it was only open to the kids at Stanford. And then we just saw all of, just what you said. You see these people pop up every day. Silicon Valley burst, and there's somebody else on the cover of Forbes. And it's like, well, I want to go do that. He just sold his app for $500 million. I want that. I want that plane. Come on, But none of it works that way. And it feels like the comparison is just
it's
terrible.
All the bad bits of social media. You're only getting the people's highlight reel, not the reality, but then actually applied to your job. And there is a misconception, and people think that if you're an entrepreneur, you're either wildly successful and a billionaire, or you're not, and therefore you're a failure. And the pressure that it puts on people, especially over time, can develop long-term issues like that. The continual stress, the worrying about money, the worrying about the people you've hired, worrying about your investors, worrying about clients, putting yourself out that you are eventually responsible for everything. People that you hire they can leave and they're not expected to stay the course. But as an entrepreneur, as you said, like that roller coaster is extremely stressful and can be very damaging to your mental health, your bank balance, your relationships. When it goes well, it's amazing. One of the taglines we've got for Humble is that entrepreneurship is hard. We're here to make it easier. It doesn't have to be negatively life-changing, but it can be extremely rewarding.
So when you start with entrepreneurs, what does that process look like?
The first So when we had Dallas Inc. as a consultancy, and we've got Austin and Vancouver and Houston now and Fort Worth, we have a 30-day turnaround. So it's idea to market in a month. And that has really kind of steered how we approach things. It's steeled people's minds because you really can only focus on the important things if you've got a month.
30 days.
And you can do it. I mean, we proved you can do it. You can do it over and over and over. The challenge that I think a lot of people have is that one of the classic mistakes is trying to build an audience and a product at the same time. It's nearly impossible. You need to validate your product, yes, but building the audience is a different process. So what happens is people then build a product and they go, ta-da, I built this. And the customer's like, I don't want it because it didn't ask anything along the way. And it's that kind of expectation management that a lot of people, they don't know what the process is. They think it's totally different. And we're here to literally provide a sort of program of resources that said, like, in your first month, you want to be thinking about this. And in the second month, this. You don't have to worry about patents and trademarks in your first month. Like, let's get something out there for a customer to have a look at.
Yeah. Market validation. Right. I mean, you hear that all the time. It's how many companies, they go and they build something, but all of the feedback has been in an echo chamber. They talk amongst themselves and they talk within their own groups, but they're not really getting that external validation of a market saying, yeah, I would pay money for it and I would pay this much money for it, so that you actually kind of have that built-in process of, well, I'm designing this product or service for X person, and I know that they're going to pay $15 a month for it. So that's how we're going to build it, and that's who we're going to build it for. I feel like that it shouldn't get glossed over, but I feel like the majority of companies are just kind of consuming their own exhaust, and they're focused internally instead of externally.
And I guarantee you and I have both made the mistake and continue to, and we'll make it again.
Oh, sure.
We launched Humble as an early. It is in beta, so anyone who goes to look at the site now, just bear with us. We want the feedback. It'll change completely by the end of October, by the end of the year. We know that we've built something that we think people want. We haven't actually asked them yet. But for us, it was kind of low stakes because we had the experience and the resources to do it. And if we need to pivot and go in a different direction, then we can.
What are some of the questions you get from entrepreneurs on day one that are interested in working with you guys?
That's a really great question. It really depends. There's two types of people that we work with. This is just Dallas Inc., right? So Dallas Inc. is a consultancy that's in 30 days, we'll give you the keys back. Like, there's your business, there's your brand, there's your everything. And the people who come to us with that are either people who are have the money but not the time, or there are people who just simply do not have the experience to go along with it. And when it's the first one, when it's pure consultancy, people come to us and say, I have this idea, I want to put it out in the market, I don't know what to do, but here's money. It's much easier in that respect because we sort of say to them, take a step back, we'll bring you along this process, but let us drive. The other kind of entrepreneur where they're extremely passionate about what their idea is or what their product needs to be, it's much harder to get them to listen to the market and get them to listen to other people's experience because they're so passionate about it. And the greatest challenge is making people just gently aware that some babies are ugly. Like it's the case. It's not always going to work. But that's where the problem people come along with is that they spend too much money, and it doesn't work. But if you can not spend a lot of time, and you can pivot really quickly, then that's kind of a really smart way to go.
That was going to be my next question. So great segue. How do you guys work with entrepreneurs that come to you? They're super passionate, super focused on their product or their service, but they're looking at it through the lens of a parent. It's just like you mentioned, they're doing what's best for the baby as opposed to what's best for the business.
It's really difficult. It's really challenging because they don't want to hear it. And so one of the things we are extremely good at is measuring everything, getting customer feedback, getting data, showing, for instance, action tracking on a website. We designed a early draft of the site. People are clicking over here. We always thought we were going to go over here. Like giving that data back to the customer to say, look, you might be wrong.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice way of positioning it. It's not that the idea is wrong or that you should be less passionate about your business or service, but it's more of thinking about it through the lens of how do I help this baby business or service get legs and footing so that it can walk on its own and continue to grow and build, as opposed to over nurturing, which I think, and again, like you mentioned earlier, I mean, I've fallen in that trap too, where I love an idea that I have, I love a business that I'm doing, but I'm definitely not thinking about it in terms of how do I give oxygen to that business. I mean, I'm suffocating it. Honestly, I'm putting too much over it, and I'm not letting it ultimately breathe and do what it needs to do.
The classic mistake that I keep making is you overthink things. There is a common trap that we all fall into, is that firstly, anyone's going to read what you're putting out there. That's the first mistake. Like no one, it's so much out there. Like you've got to shout to get heard, and then that they care. Like it doesn't matter as long as there's not a spelling mistake in it. Like at this point, like it just doesn't really matter.
That's always the hardest part. I mean, like you've been to some of our Founders Live Dallas events where it's a pitch competition with 99 seconds to pitch a business. That is the crux of it. It's why are you there? Why should I care? That's all that it is, and I feel like that part gets glossed over so much. But so now with Humble.inc, and you guys are really focused on getting those entrepreneurs to market in a certain time frame. What does some of that process look like? Like, what are some of the validating and all of that, the factors you go through?
We are trying to make it more accessible. There is a tendency for people to think of entrepreneurs as the Silicon Valley white guy. So start off, like, let's try and shift away from that. We also want to make sure that we're not taking a purely Western or US focus. Humble actually launched in 6 languages because this is something that anybody anywhere can be a part of. I grew up in West Africa, and there is a very big difference between poverty there and poverty here. So if we can provide resources that people in their own time can make use of, and it doesn't cost them anything, that's what Humble is going to be doing. And we're actually leveraging a lot of the programmed work from MIT Sloan and Harvard Business School. So that's a lot of the academic side of it is going to come from there, plus our own experience. And plus, we're also going to be creating a platform, a moderated platform for experienced entrepreneurs to share their thoughts as part of a staged program. So, yes, there will be bits about patents and trademarks, right? But let's deal with that later. So, a bit like Duolingo, you go down the courses. That's kind of the approach that we're going to be taking, and a marketplace for people to have the simplified versions of what their options are, what their choices are for certain things. An inexperienced entrepreneur, if you say to them, "Oh, you could use Notion or Airtable," and they go like, "What's Notion?" Like it's at that point, like you don't know what you don't know. And we're there to say, look, you're going to need a task management platform. You're going to need some documenting. So here are some options, and then there'd be a video describing why, and then you can go and subscribe to Notion or whatever you want. So it's a curated marketplace plus content, and eventually we'll be doing the consultancy side as well.
It's fantastic because the majority of entrepreneurs, they're good in their one or two fields. They're good in creativity and sales, but when it comes to project management and finances, that's, especially if they're a solopreneur, they're doing it all on their own, and that part that they're not good at is taking up the majority of the time because they're having to kind of level themselves up just to get the baseline. We all have kind of been there. So
and it's so easy to overthink a specific I'm going to research Airtable to death. Like, okay, but that's not the point. Your business is not Airtable. Your business is your business. So this is just one part of the tool. If you don't want to use it, great. Your logo will change. The company direction will change. The website will change. It doesn't matter in the first stages. You just get it out there and see what happens. And some of the greatest companies have come from completely different pivot. I mean, look at Slack. Designed by a game company as an internal messaging system, and then sells $36 billion. And then when he did it, he was like, right, can I finally get back to making computer games now?
Right. Yeah. Seeing that need in the market and
Right.
making the pivot.
And then
We-
Nintendo started out making playing cards. The thing that your business does is going to change.
so let's go back to the mental health
Yeah.
aspect. Where does Humble come in on that part? Because like we said, I mean, it's overlooked. Everybody knows about it, talks about it, but there's not, or at least what I've seen, there aren't tangible solutions as opposed to take your time, sleep in on a Thursday, that kind of thing, where it's a lot more self awareness and self care as it is to something where it's like, look, build this into your process because we
Right.
have to focus on ourselves
Exactly.
first.
So the mental health thing is really interesting because, and the term that we're playing around with is mental strength, because there is a bit of a tendency for, especially among male entrepreneurs, that mental, oh, I'm fine. Like people, men don't tend to reach out for help as much as women do. Like the stats show it. That's why you see so many more homeless men than women, because they don't ask for help.
Interesting.
And especially in the UK, and it's a problem here as well. The there's this. So how are we tackling mental health? So firstly, we're talking about it. Like we're making it from day one. Like it doesn't have to be horrible. Other people are going through it as well. It isn't the kind of eat, pray, love side of things that people will like immediately expect. Go and run yourself a bath, and that's not what we're talking about. This is about making people aware that this stuff is difficult. And I think it was Gary Vee, and he goes, it is hard. It's not double shift at McDonald's hard. Like that's hard. This is difficult, and he makes a very good point that I think it's him. Is it by the fact that you're an entrepreneur, it means you are probably intelligent, affluent, white, and male. Like you've already got a lot of advantages. Go easy on yourself. You don't have to do everything overnight. You don't have to look at these BS stories of people coming up with an idea and selling their app in 3 days, or making millions on crypto. Like people don't talk about the bad bits because they're bad. So we're trying to overtly throughout the experience, throughout the modules. It's more than take a break and be nice to yourself. It's be realistic with your investors, with your customers, with your team. Like to set the pace and don't people don't work like Elon Musk, right? This 100-hour a week forever stuff is just it's nonsense.
Yeah.
You've got it doesn't have to be all consuming. It doesn't take over your entire life.
Yeah. I think even just starting that as a baseline is fantastic because it's better to start there and at least have that constantly in the back of your mind with everything that you're doing on those late nights. At least it's there as kind of a
Right.
foundation layer, as opposed to getting 3 months in, you're running yourself ragged, and then you have to, and then trying to retrain yourself or at least come into the
And
conversation.
if you're your spouse or partner or whatever, like if they are not an entrepreneur, they won't understand. Your friends don't understand. It's incredibly lonely sometimes. And I talk to my friends about it, and my best friend is like, I don't actually know what you do. I'm like, well, then that's a common question actually. And it's about making sure that people realize that there are resources out there. There are other people going through it. There are places to turn to when things get too stressful, and just making sure that the resources are known. Now, we're not mental health providers, but we are going to be partnering with a group of emerging entrepreneurial therapists and counselors. So they know the rhythm of the game. They know that it's a roller coaster ride. Like we're partnering with them. We're going to be promoting those resources as well.
And I think that is kind of what it is. You start to kind of hear the same things a lot, whether you're talking with friends or other entrepreneurs or whatever the case is. That a lot of times it's lonely. It's not what you see. I feel like a lot of times it's like
Or
Hollywood.
Instagram.
Externally you see it one way, but then when you live it and you're actually doing it, it's like, man, there is nobody else here. It's Friday night. It's 9:30, and I'm building a CRM system.
Or
There's
you're not, and you think you should be. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I feel like
yeah,
I struggle
exactly.
with that
Yeah,
one more. It's like, oh, I should
yeah.
be
I'm
doing
dinner
that.
with friends on a Friday night, like, oh god, you're thinking about it all the time. You know, and
Yeah.
especially now, there are more entrepreneurs than ever. And last year, the number of startups in the US nearly doubled from the year before. So 6
Wow.
million startups last year. And I've been doing this my entire career, never had a proper job. I don't know what I'm doing half the time. You know, maybe edit that bit out. No, that's fine. No, it's just like we're trying to provide, 20 years, I'm trying to provide like 20 years of my experience to help people avoid some of the biggest mistakes. Now, we will always find new, innovative ways to screw up, right? But let's avoid some of the big ones.
Yeah.
And trying to reduce the pressure a little bit, because actually that stress doesn't make you creative. It doesn't make you productive. It doesn't make you a good
Nope.
entrepreneur or leader. And you burn out really quickly. And everybody is burnt out at the moment.
Absolutely. I even had this conversation with my wife, and this was back in 2017, I believe, when I started, an agency. I left corporate
Yeah,
America for a little while,
I
started an
remember.
agency. But I remember before I ever did that, I remember sitting down with her. It was a dinner, and it's like, look, this is how things are going to be for a little while. We didn't have our son at that point, so it was just her and I. So there was a lot more flexibility, just literally in terms of hours in the day. But it was one of those things of later nights. That's kind of what's going to happen for a little while. And like you said, I mean, she was so fully supportive of it, and it's just I feel like those conversations just have to happen. Because if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to build something, if you haven't discussed that with your partner, significant other, family, whatever the case is, I would advise that start there, just
Right.
so that you can at least level set. So, just to start to kind of give a little bit of an idea into
Yeah,
that
and
world.
that's a really good point. Couples fight the most about money. And what we've seen is
Yeah.
that here's a hypothetical example, right? But let's say there's a dentist in Plano, and he's got this amazing idea for some medical tech. I wouldn't expect to start drilling people's teeth myself. I wouldn't expect him to quit his job that he spent 20 years training to do and successfully building a practice. Got the family depend on him, all this stuff, to quit his job and then go and be an entrepreneur. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So if you could provide the tools where someone can build, they can understand how to take that product to market, or they can understand where they can. And this isn't like, those ads you see on TV, like, call us, we're inventors or whatever. Like, none of that stuff, right? This is about empowering
Yeah.
people, giving people the tools to do it themselves. They can protect their ideas. They don't have to spend a lot of money doing it, and they can learn from really good, experienced entrepreneurs for whom it hasn't always gone well.
And how much more do you learn during the times that it hasn't gone well than the times that it
Yeah.
has? The times that it has, you're celebrating. You're like, oh, that marketing campaign shifted my sales, or I closed that deal because of XYZ that I used. But the things that don't go
Yeah.
well, because entrepreneurship is just so all encompassing that, like you said a while ago, even though it's been your entire career and you're still learning things, that's what it's all
Right.
about. There's just a different
Yeah.
baseline
I've yet to find a task management platform I like in 20 years, by the way.
now. That's the one that
Yeah,
hasn't changed. I don't like
exactly.
anything.
And there's always a new one. Yeah. The other thing is about the perception. Like, being an entrepreneur is a bit like being an artist, I think. Not that I'm an artist, but if someone was an artist and they sold a painting for some huge amount of money, that doesn't mean that they're done. In fact, they probably think that painting could have been better or could have been different in some other way, and they've got other things that they are working on. It's not just this one painting. So
Right.
there's this expectation that people, you're chasing that massive exit. It doesn't exist. Like, I mean, but the only person maybe is MySpace Tom. Sold it for 500 million. It's like, right, thanks guys, I'm out.
No, it's a photographer. Yeah, no, it just travels the world and takes
Right,
amazing
exactly.
photos. It's like, oh, that guy's still
Yeah,
around.
exactly. He got it right. For him,
Yeah.
there was a massive exit. I mean, if you're talking like ridiculous amounts of money, great. But just
Yeah.
for building something, that's there's an interesting study done by Harvard Business School about the reasons why people become entrepreneurs. Actually, on the mental health side, there's another set of thinking about the anxiety, ADD, mental health issues that entrepreneurs have. Is it because they're entrepreneurs, or do they seek out entrepreneurship as a career because they already have them? And there's a lot of really interesting work about that. But the HBS study on the reasons why people become entrepreneurs, money is very low down on the list. It's like 7 out of 10. But it's about creating things, about empowering yourself, about taking control of something that you've got in your head. All this, I don't have the list in front of me, but money is not the motivator. And if it is, that's the last thing you'll make.
Yeah, and I've heard that once or twice before, where money is really low at the bottom, even though it seems like that's what everybody wants. They're chasing the big exit. I want to get acquired, whatever the case
Want to
is.
pay salaries.
Really, yeah.
Make it to the end of the month.
And really, it's couldn't be more well said. Just keep the lights on. Don't let me start a business in July in Texas because might not can pay the AC bill.
So, like, looping back to the fact that there are more entrepreneurs and more startups than ever in the US. The Great Resignation, the quiet quitting, all of that stuff. Like, why are people seeking to be entrepreneurs? It isn't the cash. It definitely isn't the cash. To your roller coaster analogy, like the bank balance meanders unbelievably. And some days they're like, well, okay, and especially during the pandemic. End of 2020, realizing the stress end of 2020 really, really got to me because I was, I had a couple of days at the beginning of each month that were, I allowed myself to be calm, and then the race to find cash for the end of the month became all consuming, and it was terrifying. You're responsible for, tens of families at once, and in some of the cases of my team, like, they were the only income earner, and it's a pandemic. Like, if we die, then they're not being able to get out of work, and it made people do strange things. But
and those months just get shorter and shorter. You'll enjoy May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. But then what feels like it's May 8th is all of a sudden May 29th, and you're like, wait a minute.
That it is so good. This is the point. It's so good to talk to someone who's like, there isn't, I don't know, you can't describe the feeling when it gets to around the 8th, you're like, Christ, I've got to find some money real quick. And you think, I've got 3 weeks, it's fine. And then suddenly it's the end of the month.
Yep. Like that. Overnight, it is the end.
And it, just like with household budgeting, like it only takes a couple of unexpected expenses within the business to cause a lot of problems. Let alone a global pandemic. We started fundraising in March 2020, and we did it. We did it, but it wasn't easy.
Hardest time ever, there. March 2020. Yeah, I mean, and I think I've shared this in past episodes and whatnot. I can literally remember I would be working on closing a couple of deals at one time. They're right there. They're on the cusp, on the doorstep. And then I remember it was a Wednesday. Every single one of them said no. Every single one. None of them closed. And just that defeated feeling. I had an office across the street from where we lived at the time, and walking across the street into that house, and it's just, you almost don't even know where to start, because it's all on you. If you're a solopreneur, you're doing it for yourself. My team is getting paid regardless. So my team has already worked on projects and they're recurring, so they're getting paid regardless. And I mean,
that's rough, man.
It's just hard, and then you have the other ones where it's closed to this week, and I didn't think I was going to, or I didn't feel great about them. It feels like you just have to, there's that certain level of discomfort. And I don't mean discomfort in a bad way or in a negative way, but just that you just almost kind of have to live with it a little bit. When you're not getting that steady every 2 week paycheck from an employer, you you have to get creative, and you have to just be comfortable with a little bit of
So
discomfort.
that's really interesting, and I agree with you. The question I've been asked is, what makes a good entrepreneur? And I think without doubt, it's resilience. Because there are times, like in that moment, when all your deals crash, and you cannot but question pretty much everything. Like, how did I get this wrong? What
Yeah.
am I doing the right thing at all? Why didn't I just go and join a bank? Like, and then a certain appetite for risk.
Yeah.
It is not for everyone. There are definite times that I wish I'd just gone had a real career, and then there are moments like I would never do that.
I feel like I've seen studies before where it's, are entrepreneurs born? I mean, can you tell that from an early age, or is it something along the nature nurture path that flips a switch? Because I feel like you're either one or the other. People are like, oh yeah, I love my career. I know what I want to do. It's the kid in high school who's 15 and you're like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he says, I want to be a corporate lawyer. And then you look back 20 years and now he's a corporate lawyer. I was like, dude, at 15, I didn't even know what I was eating for lunch that day. And my interests still change now. I mean, I just feel like I'm a
Yeah.
tinkerer. Every so often I just want to try something else. I just want to work at it. I want to learn about it. And I don't know. Do you think it's more how people are, or do you think it's something else along the way that flips it?
That's really interesting. I had to dig out the study that one of my investors was talking to me about, which is about the pre-existing mental health conditions that entrepreneurs have. ADD, depression, anxiety, all that stuff. And is it that they develop that as entrepreneurs, or is it that they are that way and this is the career that fits? Certainly the ADD thing. I mean, and then I realize it's over talked about and over diagnosed, and I'm not saying that everybody has that, but that constant creative streak to say, I want to tinker, as you said, tinker with this. I've got this idea. Like, that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about Dallas Inc. and Humble, is because we get to work on so many different things at once, and we get to bring things to life for other people, and it's really satisfying.
And so let's go back into Humble a little bit. So is it entrepreneur comes to you? Is it more of an equity thing? Is that how you guys
No,
operate?
so Dallas Inc. is pure consultancy. Humble is going to be a lot of free content, some subscription content, and then consultancy. But eventually
Gotcha.
we want to launch a fund that we will, because we will be involved in the process of launch from the beginning with some of these guys. We're in the right spot to invest a little bit further down the line because we know exactly how they got to that point. But so anyone can go to the site. We're trying to make it as a egalitarian offering, as that there is stuff on there for free that you can just learn, and some of it is information about the products that you might need. That's the marketplace. There's a bunch of content through podcasts and videos. We're trying to master the delivery of content in any way that people want to consume it. So the same bit of information could be read, could be listened to, could be watched.
For sure.
We're trying with that, and in any language.
Oh, that's a battle right there. I mean, that is a hill to
Right.
climb, just getting them in multiple
So
languages.
we're getting there, but it's a global resource. And then there's going to be a subscription layer as well for like the premium content, for like downloadable courses, all that kind of stuff. Expert series of content from we'll be doing a series of interviews with some really, really, really successful entrepreneurs, and actually, interestingly, a couple of not very successful ones anymore. One of the guys we've got lined up is a Wall Street trader who made one of the biggest losses ever. And my question to everybody is going to be, how do you deal with fear? And Mike, I cannot wait to talk to him, because how did he go back to work the next day? I mean, you lose in the billions at lunchtime, and then you go home and probably have a drink and a cry, and then you get up and do it again. Like, it's amazing.
It almost feels like it has to be something like a professional sports player, in the end of a very important game 5, you could send your team home as a winner, and you miss the layup, But there's still a game 6. You still have to show up for work the next day, but you can't bring game 5 player to game 6. You've got to focus. You got to leave. You got to shed that skin,
and especially when it's that high profile within sports. We're actually talking to a number of athletes as well. That could be a career defining miss. The guys who missed the penalty in the World Cup, like how do you get up and do it again? You're forever going to be remembered as that.
Well, this has been such an amazing chat with you, my friend. And before we wrap up, before you tell everybody how they can keep up with you and everything you've got going on, I want to talk about the painting that's on the wall behind you. We talked a little bit about creativity and being an artist before. Tell me more about that one. Just because it's striking, just kind of over your left
this
shoulder.
one. So actually, I'm in a hotel. I've got no idea what that painting is.
It's a Hilton original. I love it. That's awesome.
I'm on.
I have no idea.
I couldn't. If I close my eyes, I couldn't describe it to you. I just haven't been paying attention. So I'm on an investor roadshow at the moment. So I'm traveling around.
Gotcha.
Cap out, asking for cash. It's going very well. It's going well.
I love it. Fantastic. Well, yeah, the floor is yours. Tell everybody how they can follow you. Make sure people follow you on LinkedIn, any of that kind of stuff. So even once you guys do have everything set to a place where you're ready to drive traffic to, we'll make sure all that's in the description.
So simple, at Charlie Lass on LinkedIn only. And then Humble.inc is our website, where there are a bunch of free resources that we'll be constantly adding to, and new content comes out pretty much every day.
Fantastic.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for your time. This has been great. Heck yeah.
Freedom over fame. Freedom over cycle stays the same.